This is the Timberbark made by CIVIVI. It's intended to be a small hunting knife, but I think it works well as an EDC and even a light-duty hiking knife. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on it, keep watching. All right, before we get started, I do want to thank CIVIVI for sending out the Timberbark so that I could share it with you. So as always, what we're going to do is we'll focus in on the knife for a few minutes. I'll go through its specifications, its design. I'll talk about what I see as its best use scenario, and we'll do a few demonstrations, then wrap this video up. Now, before we focus in on the knife itself, let me share with you what it came with. So this is the sheath the knife arrived in. Pancake designed, Kydex, very simple, but very well made. I added an ulti-clip to mine to gain a little extra versatility in that now I can carry it inside of my pocket or even inside of my waistband if I want. But I've also added a length of paracord to use it as a neck narrow. This is actually my preferred way of carrying the knife. It's just nice to have a couple of different options. You can see there is also a couple of milled slots on either side with if the ulti-clip wasn't on there. So you could even run a strap through that and, different ways of setting it up, I guess. But it is also set up and spaced properly for use with things like a Tec-Lock. Now, CIVIVI did send their own version of a Tec-Lock. It is branded by CIVIVI, and it's adjustable for where you want to put it on your knife. So you can carry your knife horizontally or vertically, depending on how you want to set it up on your sheath. And the last thing that came with it is a lanyard. So this is a nice paracord, gutted paracord lanyard. I've made a number of these myself. This is very well done. It's just a little bit too big for my purposes, but you may like it, choose to put it on, choose not to put it on, whatever you want. So I chose to make my own little tiny one with a crown knot on it, and I'll show you why I did that in a moment. Now, I'm just going to go through a few of the specifications for this knife. So start with overall length is 6.89 inches. The blade length is 3.2 inches, but the cutting edge is only 2.75 inches because you can see there is a considerable size choil at the back of the blade where the ricostral and the plunge line are. I'll talk more about that choil in a minute. So the blade thickness is quite thin at 3 millimeters or 0.12 of an inch. The blade height is 1.14 inches, which is actually kind of high for a knife that thin, which really makes for a very full, slicey grind on it. And the weight for this knife, 3.34 ounces, so a very lightweight knife indeed. Steel, great choice for its intended purpose, 14C 28M, hardened to between 58 and 60 on the Rockwell scale. Now, the handle material is G10. I chose the orange. I think it's ideal for my intended purposes, which is a neck knife. But even as a hunting knife, I think this is a great little choice. We can talk about that in a moment. And the handle thickness comes in at about 10 millimeters. You can see it's a very thin handle. All right, let's look at the knife and look at its design. So the first thing is the blade itself. It is a full flat grind. It has quite a bit of belly leading up to the tip with a slight drop point. And what that is ideal for, of course, is at a hunting knife for skinning game or entering the bellies of fish or anything else you want to use it for. This is what its intended purpose is. This is what CIVIVI markets this knife is as a hunting knife. And to verify that, look at the jimping on the top. So there is jimping back here where your thumb would rest, but also forward towards the tip. I'll show you the different grips that I think this would allow you to use it for at the same time. Now, the G10 handles are quite thin, but then again, this is not intended to be a full-time wood processing knife. We'll do some wood processing, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. It has torque screws to hold the handles on, so if you really wanted to take them off and replace them with something else or a paracord wrap, you could do that. Should know that the blade rides proud or high just above the G10 material all the way across, and that's true all the way around the belly. There is a bit of a protrusion of the tang at the back where you can put your lanyard on. Now let's just talk through the design a little bit more in terms of why I say this makes a great hunting knife, but only an okay woods knife, and I'll explain my meaning in a minute. So to start with, the idea, of course, is that you can use this like in the hand like that. You can move forward on the choil, but I'm going to tell you that choil isn't very big, so you do have to be careful that you don't let your finger ride up on the edge of the blade because, of course, it is sharp. But what that really works well is if you want to get into an animal and use it as a skinning blade, first thing you can do is lay your finger forward on the forward jimping, and that allows you to get in under the skin and without piercing the entrails, slide it along, and then as you start to skin your animal, you can do so with precision control with your finger way up forward. At the same time, can you now see where my center finger is? It's just laying inside of that choil, so it gains me lots of control. I can even bring it back to the choil on the guard and do exactly the same thing. And there's even a set of milled pinch grips right up here, so they all work together just for that purpose. It makes a great little hunting knife. Now, I don't do a lot of hunting or fishing. I would probably use this fishing more than I would hunting, and that's another idea why the stainless steel 14C28N makes a great choice for this. And the orange, of course, is that if you're inside of an animal, you want to make sure you don't lose it. If you lay it on the ground, you want to make sure you don't lose it. I really like the orange handles for that purpose. Now, as an EDC knife, it does well because that same sweep and long, thin, flat grind means this is a very, very slicey blade, great for all those little tasks like, opening cardboard boxes or mail or any number of things, cutting rope, whatever it is you use a knife for. Around camp, what I've been using for out here as I'm out in the woods is food prep. Again, stainless steel is great for food prep. It washes up nice. I don't have to be concerned about it rusting. It just makes for a nice little food prep knife. As an ADC knife, it is a little bit limited by its handle size, so it's not a big handle. It looks like it would be, right? But it's actually kind of short from the choil to the beak at the end here. I can only get in 3 fingers. As you can see, only 3 fingers. So when I wrap this into my hand, I cannot get my pinky finger on the handle, and that's why I have the little bit of paracord right here. So now that's kind of where my handle extension is the best way to describe it, so that I can get a good grip on there without any fear of losing control. Now, I don't fear losing control because it is grippy enough, and the intended use of this is not for heavy-duty tasks. In fact, it's not a great at skinning, it is great at skinning. It's not good at wood processing. No, I should say it's not great at wood processing. In fact, I'm going to do a few demonstrations in a moment's time, what you can do with it, but keep in mind this is a small knife, and it's great for all the other tasks. But if you rely on this as your one and only knife, well, you just don't rely on it for wood processing by itself. But having said that, I want to do a few simple tasks with a piece of wood so that I can show you what it is capable of. In an effort to keep this realistic and what you can do with a small knife like this, I chose just a small piece of quite aged maple, so rock maple, and this is about 10 inches in length, 1.5 inches at this maximum diameter. So this shouldn't be a bad test or too hard of a test for it. There is a knot. I'll try to avoid that because there's no sense doing things that the knife is not really intended to be used for. It spans it easy enough, and it will split it easy enough. So that was easy enough. Yeah, okay, so the wood split easy enough. What I'll do now is split it down into some smaller pieces, and we'll see how it does at feather sticking. Appears to be a little older than I thought it was, but all part of the challenge, right? Let's see what it does. Now, here's the thing that I find right off of the top. Being so small, I'm not getting a very good grip on this knife. Yes, I do have XL hands, but just the same, it is a small knife, so I'm not expecting this to do a great job at feather sticking in terms of doing a whole lot of it. But I have found that because it is so thin at 3 millimeters, so deep at 1.14 inches or whatever I said it was, and the fact that it's a full flat grind, it means that it is very slicey. So what I have found is that it will feather stick quite well as long as you don't expect this to work like a dedicated bushcraft knife. As you can see, there's not a lot of effort pushing this knife through wood, and it's all about the geometry. With that thin blade, it does a good job of sliding down the wood. So yes, you can do feathering with this. You're just not going to do it for a long period of time because it just gets a little tiring holding on to this small handle. but feather it will. So I guess if you're going to carry a small knife like this, you should be able to rely on it to do some of the other camp tasks that you might want to do with a knife, and that, of course, one of them, which may be making tent pegs. So that's that same split of maple that I was just using for feather sticking, but let's see if we can't turn this into a very rudimentary tent peg. So I'll do this with the method of just kind of rocking in the stop cut, and that is about a third, a little bit more than a third of way in, and we'll just cut out the L or 7 shaped notch to create a place for our guy line to grab on, and there, we've got that end of the tent peg done. Now I'll just set up to show you what it's like to use it on the other end in the chest lever grip for putting a point on it. Again, that same piece of maple. I'm going to put a point on this end of it, so I'm going to hold it in the chest lever grip is to start. That's the reverse grip here, and let's just see how it does. Well, the knife is slicey. I've already established that, of course. So it's going to bite into the wood and create a tent peg in very short order. But I will say it's not all that comfortable. It's just a little too small for doing this for more than a couple of at a time. It fits in my hand, but here's what happens. I'm going to use it for any length of time. The point here is going to dig into my hand way back here. But for a few not feather sticks so much as tent pegs, yeah, definitely you can use it in the chest lever grip. All right, I just want to give you a few more comments as we wrap this video up. If you have watched any of my knife reviews, you know there is another test or two that I often do with my knives, just to show the versatility in terms of doing bushcraft tasks. And one of them, of course, is scraping with the spine. I like to scrape just dry wood to get some fuzz off of it. I like to scrape a piece of fat wood to get something I can ignite with that. And I like to scrape the fire steel as well. And if a knife can do all three of those things, then it's actually quite versatile as a fire-starting knife. Well, the CIVIVI Timberbark is not going to do that. And the reason is, and this is something I have not pointed out, is that the edge, it is milled flat, but it is chamfered at 90 or at 45 degrees on each side, just a little tiny bit. It makes for a comfortable use with your thumb, and it does make for a nice little carving knife in that respect, but it just takes it off of the table as far as scraping goes here. You know, it's just like that won't do anything to my fingernail. It won't do anything to a fire steel. Now, having said that, if that's really important for you in a small knife like this, I see that as something that would be very easy to rectify with a file, or I don't know, think a grinder is necessary, but a belt sander, something small enough. You could put that 90-degree edge on there, and then you'd have a knife that has just that much more versatility. I think that's something I may actually do with this knife, because everything else about it just screams, carry me around my neck, carry me in my pocket. You'll barely notice it, and then it's there when I need it. So yeah, my closing thoughts for the CIVIVI Timberbark is, I have heard comments, and I tend to agree with them, that it is not the best EDC knife in terms of something that you can use for extended periods of time because of the shortness of the handle. But if you keep in mind that this was intended for all the heavy-duty tasks, you'll put most of your other outdoor knives in, bushcraft knives in, more that it is something that you'll use occasionally, use for light-duty tasks, and more importantly, you can use for hunting or game processing or food processing, all of those things, then that's where this knife is definitely going to shine for sure. So those are my closing thoughts on the CIVIVI Timberbark. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comments section below. I will put the links to where you can take another look at the CIVIVI Timberbark in the video description, as well, of course, as all the specifications. But until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.